Well, at first, I brushed off the idea that Deion Sanders would leave Colorado, and now I am not.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. That's Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs joining me to discuss whether Deion Sanders would actually leave Colorado after 2 years. A lot of people would get to take victory laps if that comes to pass. Is Texas the SEC favorite in 2025? And there's a solution being floated for the college football transfer portal. That's actually a good idea. Oh, happy day. So let's dive into this, Kevin. I did not discuss this yesterday intentionally because I thought I don't think there's anything to this. And then real reporters started saying, by the way, Jerry Jones called Deion and there was a conversation, and then Deion's putting out a quote saying, yeah, it's nice to hear from him. And it's like, oh, okay. My takeaway from the quote, Kevin, is there is not a 0% chance. There is a greater than 0% chance that Deion Sanders leaves Colorado for the Cowboys. I still lean towards it doesn't make a ton of sense. What say you?
Yeah, I was kind of in the same boat as you up until last week when he went on Good Morning America and said, I'd do it if I could coach my sons. And I was like, that has been completely different than what he's been saying this entire time. It was no, never. I never want to follow my sons to the NFL. And then all of a sudden it was like, I think there's a reality sinking in that he could be his other son, Shiloh, his best chance of getting into the NFL. So I don't know if that's a factor into why he's possibly playing with this. And then it's also worth noting for the fans, Deion Sanders has a contract extension on the table right now that has not been signed. So this could also be a contract negotiation tactic. That being said, the Dallas Cowboys job is an interesting one because it's obviously, and Spencer, feel free to jump in here, top 5 most biggest important sports team franchise in America. It's got
that depends on the metric that we're going off of here. I would want no part of the Cowboys coaching vacancy. Absolutely. If I want to be a coach in the NFL, get this, Kevin, I would rather be the head coach of the Raiders or the Bears or the Jags than be the head coach of the Cowboys. You saw what Troy Aikman said, right? He ripped the job up and down, basically said, I don't think this is a high-end job. I believe that he is right.
Right. But market-wise, in terms of popularity, it is still very popular. And so
100%.
I think that part is a little shocking. I don't see Deion Sanders shying away from that. But let's dive into the nitty-gritty of why it's complicated. And this is why I don't think it'll happen. Spencer, you love old people shows as much as anyone. What did Deion Sanders say on Good Morning America was a requirement or the requirement for him to coach in the NFL?
That he'd have to have his sons there.
He's had to have his sons there, right?
Yeah.
The Cowboys currently have the number 12 pick in the NFL draft. Shedeur Sanders, by all metrics, except for like one NFL insider who's all of a sudden was like, he's not a first rounder, which that was like, I was like, have you seen this draft?
In this quarterback class? Are you kidding me?
I was like, I might be a first rounder by accident. This class is terrible. But Shedeur Sanders, is a top 5, top 10 pick at worst. So he's not in their range. So you're already having to trade up. And the Dallas Cowboys just signed an extension with Dak Prescott that is 4 years. I think it's $250 million. Year 1 is next year. And if they move on from Dak, they have a $104 million cap hit. And Jerry Jones was upset about the cap hit that Ezekiel Elliott had, and it was like $6 million. So I don't think he'd love the 104 cap hit. And so I think that's where it gets complicated. And then also Deion Sanders, and I think the magic and sort of aura of him, if you will, has been the fact that he's been a college coach who can help uplift young men, inspire the next generation of football, and take a non-traditional college football program and make it into a powerhouse in terms of popularity. It's not there football-wise yet, but it's a powerhouse in terms of popularity. Once you go to the NFL, you have Jerry Jones telling you what to do every 10 seconds. You have Jerry Jones talking about you on a radio show, and you're no longer that guy who could motivate teams or motivate the players, because NFL players don't want to be motivated. They want to earn money, win football games, and add to their legacy. So I don't see it being a fit, and I feel like it's too complicated with all of the money things, because NFL is not college. You can't just get up and leave for another job. It's not like that.
A powerhouse of popularity. Kevin, that's why I bring you on the show for high-level terms like that. A couple thoughts there. I like that you went to the power struggle that would unquestionably exist, because at Colorado, no one tells Deion what to do.
No.
Deion decides what Deion does, and that's just okay because, well, he's the head guy in charge, and he has the opportunity to run the program how he sees fit. He doesn't have a meddling owner. He's got an athletic director who is currently, to your point, Kevin, probably praying every single night that Deion Sanders puts pen to paper and says, I will stay here and continue being the cash cow that I have been for this athletic department. The second thing is the pursuit of Shedeur Sanders financially. It's not going to happen to just, move on from Dak Prescott because of that atrocious contract. But the way they could go about it, Kevin, is find a trade partner to take Dak Prescott. But who in their right mind, the Jets, would take Dak Prescott and that contract over the prospect of adding a young, inexpensive quarterback? I don't think anyone would do it, the Jets. I don't think anyone is foolish enough to do that. And that's the only way that I can see it coming to fruition. So, and the third point I want to make here is that Deion Sanders' appeal is so great for college football, because if Deion goes to the Cowboys, you know who that's great for? Media entities and the Cowboys and Jerry Jones.
SEO property.
Yeah, it doesn't have any material impact on what happens on the field, to your point, unless he just wins as a coach. But just his mere presence at Colorado has an impact on the community, on the fan base, on the finances in a significant way, but on the team as well. He can be an average coach, and I think he's pretty darn good. He can be just an average coach, but he can win games because his presence attracts talent that won't be on other teams, and you won't get that in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is, like, if he goes to the NFL, he's kind of erasing everything that he's talked about building, right? He's talked about leaving or leading a legacy in Colorado. He's talked about wanting to help other people. And he's talked about...
Well, to be fair, he kind of did that at Jackson State.
Right. But he's talking about basically building up a program and doing something that's not following his kids. And I think going back on all three things where it's like, okay, yeah, I actually want to coach my kids again. Yeah, I don't care about my legacy here. I don't actually want a statue or my name up in the mountains, like he said. That would be quite a, like I don't even know, a hypocritical statement, if you will, where you just go back on everything that you've been preaching. And I know no coach is going to be like, this is my job until like forever, because every coach says this is my dream job until the actual dream job comes around. But Deion Sanders has really no incentive to leave college football other than personal interest. Like, it's not going to gain anything for his legacy. It's not going to help anyone but him and his sons, right? Like, it's just different.
I don't know that I don't think a coach has ever not done something because he would sound hypocritical. We've seen that far too many times. And I do think Deion Sanders is very concerned with what his image is and what his legacy is. And if he feels like the NFL is the best way to help that, I think he would do it. But to your point, I think the best of Deion Sanders comes out when he's talking about being a mentor to young kids in college. I think he excels in that role. Yeah. And clearly has, when you look at the growth of Colorado over the last 2 years since he took over. I don't think that's the reason why. I lean more towards the reasons we discuss as to why this doesn't work out to me, and it would leave Colorado in a horrible spot. I mean, it's the middle of January, Kevin. Who would they go hire?
Well, that's the thing I talked about on my show, is because people are like, why do you want to talk about this? And it's like, okay, I'll give you a weatherman analogy here. If the weather's good or bad, the weatherman still has to talk about it. That's the reason we're talking about it. We're not talking about it, and let's preface this, Spencer. We're not talking about this because we're two guys that want Deion Sanders to leave college football. In fact, I'd argue, and I think Spencer would argue, we don't want that to happen. We want Deion Sanders in college football because he made a non-traditional program a power talking point. Like, usually it's Texas, it's Bama, it's Georgia, it's Notre Dame, Ohio State, throw in a couple others, obviously. But we talk about those programs all the time. It's been very rare that we have a program like a Colorado not only be popular, but be good and popular like they were this year, and someone stay there. And so it means a whole lot more to the sport And the community, like you've been saying, they raised $113 million in the community last year because of his presence there. So I just feel like there's so much to gain by him being there. And realistically, him leaving the sport would decimate this program, right? Who are they going to hire in January, like you said? The roster would have a 30-day window, I think it is, to leave all the portal players, because when there's a coaching change, the portal opens for that school. And I can't imagine 80% of those guys are going to want to hang around in Boulder if Deion Sanders isn't there. Let's be real. He's probably the main attraction to playing at Colorado. And so you would blow up the program. It'd probably be in a worse position than it was under Carl Durrell. And then you're throwing whoever you hire into the fire.
I think that depends on who you hire.
I don't know if anyone's willing to take that risk at this moment. Like if the job opened up, say in December, it's a little different than January because the portal is closed for the most. Like obviously you could still get guys, but it's much different.
Yeah, I agree. Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, great stuff as always. Who's the favorite in the SEC in 2025? You want to jump to Bama, but is it Texas? Is it Georgia? It could be Texas. It could. That's next. First reminder, this episode brought to you by Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine, and I am all about routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, and all within your budget. So if you're looking for furniture, they've got a huge selection, and their pieces are easy to find to fit your style and fit your budget as well. Plus, free and hassle-free delivery even for the larger items. Wayfair's site is easy to navigate. You'll find everything that you need in no time. There's something for every style and every home. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Deep in the heart of Texas, there's a team that can win the SEC in 2025. That same team located in Austin could also finish, 6th, 7th in the SEC. This is going to be a wide open and wildly entertaining championship race. Who's the dominant team? Who's the clear-cut favorite? The odds makers think that it's Texas. I can see that. But as I'm about to get to, Texas has to reshuffle, has to reset a lot of different position groups. So there are two reasons that I look at Texas and say, yeah, they can sustain this going into next year. Reason number one, Steve Sarkisian has established himself as a high-level head coach in college football. He's guided the only program in the country to make each of the last two college football playoff semifinals. 4-team format, 12-team format, doesn't matter. Texas has been there. They got one conference championship in the Big 12, made the game this year, and of course, lost a thriller to Georgia, and probably got a little bit of help with that in terms of how their playoff seeding took place. So Texas is humming, and the head coach is a big reason why. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, Texas has recruited at an incredibly high level. Each of their last three classes, top 6. 2 of them have been in the top 3. Their 2025 class, according to 24/7, ranks number 1 in the country. So the talent is there. And Texas clearly has a lot of belief in that talent. How many transfers do you think Texas has added this cycle? Where do you think their class ranks? Would you believe me if I told you the number is 4? That's not their ranking. That's how many players they've taken in the portal this year. This isn't a program that's been shy about it. This hasn't been Clemson under Dabo Swinney. This is a program that just last year brought in Andrew Makuba, stud on defense, Matthew Golden, Silas Bolden, and Isaiah Bond, all of whom are off to the NFL, by the way. Those guys were their 3 best wide receivers. They all came in via the portal, and those are just some of the guys. But they've added 4 guys. One of them's a punter. They grabbed a guy from Utah, a punter. Rarely seen, but a 3-star punter, according to 24/7 Sports transfer portal rankings. So, Texas believes right now in what they have waiting in the wings. Now, the last time that Texas was in this situation was this past year. I asked Sark about this at SEC Media Days, and I thought he gave a really good response, and then backed up his answer on the field. Now, I don't think this Texas team was as good as last year's, but both were clearly very good as both reached the college football playoff semifinal. But I asked him how he felt that this was Texas's most talented team to date when you had lost a couple of really good wide receivers and a couple of stud defensive linemen. And he talked about guys that maybe are coming off an injury or are waiting to get their opportunity or are going to develop. And we saw that play out on the field this year in a number of different areas. So he has done a great job of building something that feels very sustainable. Now, Arch Manning is the biggest name at the center of all of this. He's going to be dealing with a lot of new people, a lot of new faces. But Texas dealt with a lot of new faces this year, and they found a way from the jump to be playing good football. Remember, they went into Michigan early in the season. How does that win look after the fact? Kind of closer to what it was at the time, but not quite. It's all potato and such. But they went into Ann Arbor and they blasted Michigan. That game was not close in the first half, and Michigan was never going to be able to come back. So Texas is going to be resetting at quarterback in all likelihood, barring a Carson Beck level shocking return to college football. Manning will be there, and I would watch for the name Ryan Wingo. Just keep that name in the back of your minds for, well, who's he throwing the football to? Might be a lot of Ryan Wingo. Might be a lot of Ryan Wingo. But no Isaiah Bond, no Matthew Golden, no Gunnar Helm, no Silas Bolden. I mean, those were the four best weapons Texas had this year, and Sark's going to have to develop the next batch, but he's shown he can do it once before. Last year's with the portal, might be more with high school guys this time. We'll just have to see. But Jahdae Barron, Andrew Makuba, gone. Kelvin Banks, gone. Those are just some of the guys, the most popular names, the best names perhaps from this Texas roster, but that's not all of the guys who are leaving. So there's going to be an outrageous amount of turnover here, and they're not reloading in the portal. Vegas likes them, though. Vegas likes them. Texas, along with Georgia, the two teams in the SEC championship game this year, preseason win totals right now are up, according to our friends at FanDuel, at 9.5. Now, for those of you who don't put too much stock into those, both teams that'll play in the national championship game on Monday had preseason win totals of 10.5. Ohio State and Notre Dame. Notre Dame, of course, went over. Michigan famously forced Ohio State to go under that total. And I imagine a lot of people felt good holding Ohio State over 10.5 tickets. But alas, here we are. So Texas is losing all of that. But I have a trust, based on the last 2 years, in the floor that Sark has established. The question will become, what's the ceiling? What does Arch bring? Can they be better than Quinn Ewers at quarterback? At times, that answer is no, but at times this season, that answer has been yes. There have been plenty of moments over the last couple of years where Texas fans have wanted to see more Arch Manning because, well, Quinn just doesn't have it right now. I mean, heck, Sark wanted to see Arch Manning in the first game with Georgia back in Austin. Quinn Ewers needed a break or wanted to try Arch. I mean, whatever it was, he came into the game. So that's the name that excites everyone, but I'm interested to see how the rest of the Texas team comes together. They have another good safety who is coming back for a final season, but I just look at this Texas team and say, I can see them winning the SEC. I can see them finishing middle of the pack because that's just a lot to turn. That's a lot of new. The advantage, though, in undergoing that, if you're a Longhorns fan, is there's a lot of new everywhere in the SEC. Ole Miss isn't going to have the same roster. Jackson Dart's going to the NFL. Alabama's going to be working in a new quarterback. South Carolina's probably a hot, trendy pick to finish top 2 or 3 in the SEC next year. What about Texas A&M with Marcel Reed coming back? I have plenty of optimism about what those teams can be, but I have plenty of questions as well, just like I have questions about Texas, which is why I say they're in the mix, but I don't look at them as Vegas does right now in the national championship odds and say they should be the clear-cut favorite. So the odds go like this. Again, according to FanDuel, Texas to win the national championship is second only to Ohio State at plus 650. The next closest team is Alabama at plus 1,400. Tennessee is at plus 1,600. That's not a bad value bet, by the way, with Nico coming back. Ole Miss is at plus 2,000. Those are the 4 SEC teams currently inside the odds the top 10 odds to win the national championship next year. Now, this can change throughout spring football. This guy gets hurt, that guy gets added, this guy, all that stuff can certainly move around, but that's where Vegas's tone and tenor is looking ahead to the 2025 season. And right outside the top 10, by the way, at 11th, 12th, and 14th in the national championship odds, respectively, LSU, Texas A&M, South Carolina. Florida also cracks the top 20, just one spot behind Miami and Mario Cristobal there. So I think this league has all the makings of a Big 12 rerun, which is great. I got no dog in the fight here. I just want entertaining football. This is going to be the most open the SEC has felt going into the year. Now, it was wide open this year. I think we could have a repeat of that, and it could be even more entertaining. You're going to have South Carolina throwing their hat into the mix. Maybe Missouri, with a different quarterback situation, can play a higher level of football. I'm just saying. I've seen crazier stuff transpire in the good old Southeastern Conference. So I am very excited. This is still probably the best conference in college football. But as I talked about on yesterday's show, I don't think it's a landslide by any stretch of the imagination. That doesn't mean it's not going to be fun. The Big 12, I never thought the Big 12 had a national championship team this year. The conference title race was still wildly entertaining, and the SEC will be again next year. So, Texas in the mix, but boy, everybody can just go up and down, sideways. Fugazi, it's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's fairy dust. So, hope we all get that reference. I saw something actually good. Maybe we just have to thank Joel Klatt. First reminder, this episode brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about yet? No? Well, guess what? They can, because you might have subscriptions you're paying for twice and you don't want to be a fool in that situation. Rocket Money is here to help. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. What would you do with $740? You tell me. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So maybe we have to thank Joel Klatt. He's been among the most vocal voices speaking on this particular matter. But according to Ross Dellinger, AFCA head coaches are proposing to move the transfer portal to a 10-day window in early January after bowl games, with spring window eliminated except for graduate transfers. That is the tweet that I saw, and I was so happy. Now, I'll be happier when this actually comes to fruition, but for the betterment of the sport, this needs to take place. There is no inherent logic or justification for having the transfer portal window while the season is still ongoing. It is absolute lunacy. Now, I am a college football traditionalist, so generally the phrase, other leagues don't do it like this, doesn't resonate with me. In this instance, it does, because there is a reason you do not have free agency in the middle of your season. You have trades in the professional game. That's different than free agency. That's an organization making a conscious decision to make a move for a player or get rid of a player that they feel is going to better their locker room. But the object of moving the transfer portal window is not to take away the player's ability to move. And you can have a discussion. I frankly don't really know where I come down on whether there should be a limited amount of one-time freebie transfers. I get the argument for you should only be able to move and be instantly eligible once or as a graduate transfer. So in your undergraduate career, you get one free transfer. And then after that, you got to be a grad transfer. You have to sit out for a year. I get that. It has absolutely, as I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think there's any legal weight behind that idea. So you can say you want that all you want. I don't think that's going to arrive. But this is legitimate, honest discussion about moving the transfer portal window. It's so insane. 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row. Texas last year with Malik Murphy, and Penn State this year with Bo Prabula. You have had legitimate national title contending teams who end up making it to the Final Four that are playing those games without the guy who has been their primary backup quarterback the entire season. It's insane. It's insane. Just at that position. But you lose guys from other spots as well who could have seen the field. And sure, that puts the onus on the coaching staff to have the proper recruiting depth and ability to overcome a small handful of departures that might leave your program. But I think it makes bowl season significantly worse. It gives some opportunities to guys, but it also takes away from the game. You tune into these bowl games, which I love, by the way. I never want bowl season to go anywhere. It's wildly entertaining every single year. But I hate that one of the biggest storylines during bowl season is, well, these guys aren't playing or these guys have transferred. Like, that stinks. But the transfer departure, it doesn't make any sense. So waiting until after the season, I think, is highly logical. Now, the spring transfer portal window being eliminated, and again, Klatt has lobbied hard for this for a very long time, and rightfully so, because he understands what I think a lot of us understand. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for players. It's not good for coaches. It's not good for fans, and doesn't benefit network executives somewhere, somehow. That's just not a thing. So nobody is actually aided. You have James Franklin out there with a wholehearted defense of Bo Prabula saying he didn't want to leave, but he has to leave. Every single one of those comments and remarks is clearly starting to come to a head, and I think that's great. I think that is great. Now, the elimination of the spring transfer portal window. That one is really tricky to me. And I imagine it'll be tricky for the courts as well if a player decides that that's a violation of his right to freedom of association and whatnot. Because what the spring transfer portal window usually entails, and there's still going to be one this year, what it generally entails is guys go through spring practice, see where they are on the depth chart, and realize this is not what I thought. This is not what I expected. I'm going elsewhere. Or, in some instances, you have kids that committed to a certain coach and then then the coach decides to leave at the last minute, and all of a sudden you're going, I think I need to go elsewhere. Now, when a coach leaves, you have a 30-day window automatically to enter the transfer portal. So that's perhaps still accounted for, but I would be curious to hear a coach's thoughts on what the major downside is of the spring portal window, because I fully understand what you've got with, or the issues with the current transfer portal window that's during bowl season and before the postseason begins in earnest. Like, that's obviously problematic. And by the way, I think you should move the transfer portal window to after the season. I think you should move National Signing Day to after the season. Take it out of December. Get it out of there. Put it back to make the February National Signing Day the biggest moment of the college football early offseason to set the stage for spring football. I think you should have the season. You can start bowls maybe a little bit sooner, but I think that can be tightened up. That's not perhaps a pressing need per se, unless you're one of the teams that had a bye in the playoff, in which case you think it should definitely start sooner. But that's an entirely different conversation. But have the season, have bowl season, have the playoff. Then once the season is over, open the transfer portal and say, here's a 10 to 15 day window you can enter. Then you have National Signing Day. That keeps fans' attention, by the way, which is something other leagues do a much better job of thinking about than college football does. Then you get to spring practice. Then you should release the schedules, if you're really thinking like a media savant. And after spring practice, I'm okay having a spring transfer portal window. Coaches will be frustrated because they set their depth charts and then they're having to adjust and do roster management and adjustment once again. I get that might not be the most fun thing in the world. I think that's a good opportunity for players that aren't going to see the field. And if you're the coaching staff, think about it like this. If you have a kid that would want to enter the spring transfer portal window, but he's forced to stay on the team all fall, you're just going to have a disgruntled player in the locker room who doesn't like where he falls there. And you can have your own thoughts on what that should mean for kids and learning and going through tough situations and battling it and all that sort of stuff. That's good and fine. But that's a tough one. That's a tough, the spring transfer portal window, I don't know. But fundamentally, the winter transfer portal window, phenomenal idea. This has not been implemented yet, by the way. I am really hoping this comes to fruition. And you know what? I am just doing what little I can to try to make college football a better place. However big that impact is, I'm trying because I love this sport very, very much. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.